T7 training. I'm currently travelling and providing some work to a number of clients in Victoria. We've got an interesting question though for a T7 tip, so I'm going to switch to the screen and let you have a look.
We're going to look today at how to jump over blank rows or blank cells in some source data so that we can construct a solid block of data that we can then use in other places in Excel. And you can see this example right here, we've got some data running down the side, but then we've got a couple of blank rows. And there's also this text here which we don't really want. Then we've got more data and we have irregularity here which complicates matters. We've got one blank cell but no entirely blank rows. And if I go further down, here we've got another blank row and again one cell that's blank but it's not an entirely blank row. How are we going to get a nice clean single row of headings with data running down below without manually copying and pasting this together? So first of all, we need to create some sort of indicator about whether there's a row that we don't want. And a really good way to do this is to create an if statement to create a sequence so that we're killing two birds with one stone. One thing is going to be to tell us when there's a row that we don't want because it's got a blank cell in this column. And the other purpose is going to be to create a nice indexing column which will have basically the index number for the row because this data doesn't have it. So equals if open bracket. If this cell in A2 is different to blank open quotes close quotes, well, if it's true that this cell is different to blank, then it's a cell that we want. And we're going to say let's start off with number 1 because we're in the first row. Comma, but if it's false, if it's not true that A2 is different to blank, well, that means it is blank. And we want to put in a 0 if that's the case, or just a no entry. Essentially, nothing in the cell. Close bracket, enter on the keyboard, and that's going to tell us that indeed this is row number 1. If this cell was blank, we'd end up with a blank, but it's not, so we're getting 1. So that's going to be our priming cell. That's not the cell we're going to autofill down. From here on in, we're going to say equals if, open bracket, this cell, A3, is different to blank. Well, if it's true that it's different to blank, then it's a cell that we want. So let's grab the number above us and let's add 1 to it. So this is going to become row number 2. Comma, what if this cell is blank? What if it's not different to blank? So we're going to say just grab the number above, but don't add 1 to it. And then close bracket. And this is the cell that we're going to autofill down. I'm going to autofill it down over all of that data, and you can see it's adding 1 for each row as it goes. But then once it reaches these blank cells, it says, well, let's keep using that number above, which is 5. I'm going to drag this down the entire data table, and you can see these different characteristics here, and it follows that pattern all the way through. This is row number 9, but then this one is blank on this cell, so it's still number 9, and then it clicks up to number 10 because there's something in this cell. So that's going to give us our working index in this case. I'll just center that so it looks nice. So that's going to be our step number 1, but our step number 2 is going to be to actually pull in the data that we want based on that working index. So first thing we need to do is create the actual index. I'll just call this index like that. And then I'm going to do something simple. I'll type in 1 and I'll type in 2. And then I'm going to autofill those by selecting them both and autofilling down just as far as I think I might happen to need. There are better ways to do this, but for the moment we're just going to go with this because it's not really the main engine of what we're trying to achieve. I'm also going to do something else. I'm going to select this column. You could select the whole lot like this, or you could click that E at the top. And I'm going to move this so it's on the left hand side of the data. Now I'm going to move that by hovering over the edge of that column I'm getting this 4-directional arrow and I'm dragging. That's going to go over the top of the code, so if you hold the Shift key while you drag, you're going to get an insertion line where it's going to go between columns instead of over a column. And if I let go of the mouse first and then Shift next, we've got our working index over in the first column, and you can see here those references are still working with the locations I initially typed in. So that's good. And now we've got this index over here that doesn't have any skipped numbers. Now here's the thing, VLOOKUP has a trait where it's only ever going to look for the first match of something. It never sees the second or third or fourth match, which is going to be an ideal trait for reconstructing this data without the gaps. Let's have a look. I'm just going to type in code because this will give us our actual code. Equals VLOOKUP, open bracket. And we've got the lookup value. What are we looking for? We're looking for the index number, comma, the table array. Full width of the data table, not including headings. Comma. If it finds a match, we want what's in column 2. In this case, this is in column 1 and this is in column 2 inside of the data table. So that's going to be number 2. Comma, false, because we're looking for an exact match, and then close bracket. Now we do want this to be absolute references for the table array because we want that table array to stay in place, but the G2, we want that to move down along with the formula, so it's always pulling in the associated index number for the associated formula. And pressing enter on this one, you can see obviously it's pulling in the first 5, no worries, but when we drag down to number 6, well, it's going to look for number 6, but we've got 5, 5, 5, 5, and then it pulls in number 6 here. The VLOOKUP never sees these 5s because it only ever returns the first match that it finds. So we can keep autofilling this down, and we're going to get our nice dedicated code column which has all of these codes with no gaps between them based upon whether there is a blank cell in a specific column that we can trust to be able to use that data based on whether that's blank or not. So obviously we can center this to be all nice, but we've got a bunch of hash NAs in here, and it'd be nice to clean it up so we don't have those hash NAs. So I'm going to just tidy it up a little bit by using equals if NA. If NA is going to test whether a cell returns hash NA. So if NA, open bracket, the value or the formula we're going to use normally, comma, what to do if it returns an NA, a hash NA. And if that's the case, well, open bracket, open quote marks, close quote marks is going to give us a nice blank cell, and then close bracket. Formula still works as normal, but when I drag down, all those hash NAs disappear because it's saying, well, hey, that produces a hash NA, so let's use the if NA other option instead. And we could do the similar thing here for this indexing number. We could say if a number brings back blanks in this column just here, or any other technique that we've just used to control these as well. It's all the same stuff really. For after the letters now, we're using the same technique. Equals VLOOKUP, open bracket, what we're looking for, the index number, comma, the table array, full width of the data table, not including headings, comma, in this case we want column 3, which is where the letters are, comma, false for an exact match. And again, enter, and that's pulling in our A and jumping past those blank cells so that after the N here, we're pulling in H from this row. Now obviously your data might have some extra traits in it, but this is how you get that fundamental aspect of jumping cells so that you can have a solid block of data based upon whether a particular cell is blank.
Alright, I hope everyone's found that useful. I look forward to seeing you for next time's T7 tip.